Welcome, for those of you who are not from the Graduate School of Design, to the Graduate School of Design for tonight's lecture, and to students, thanks for coming to listen to our speaker tonight, Chino Zucchi. I'm Eric Belsky. I'm the Managing Director of the Joint Center for Housing Studies of Harvard University, which is a collaborative venture of the Graduate School of Design and the Harvard Kennedy School. And it's a real pleasure for me to be here tonight to be able to introduce Professor Chino Zucchi. It's an honor and a privilege for many reasons, one of which is that he currently holds the position of the John T. Dunlop Professor of Housing and Urbanization, visiting professor. And John T. Dunlop, around which this visiting professorship is named, was a former dean of the College of Harvard University, a very distinguished labor economist, former Secretary of Labor, and an advisor to every president, which is somewhat unbelievable, between FDR and George W. Bush. He was an amazing and remarkable man who had a deep commitment to housing and urban topics, both to the issues surrounding the business of housing, but also the policy of housing, the policy of urban areas. So it's a real honor and a privilege to be able to present one of the first recipients of this distinguished honor of being the visiting professor with his name. Chino, I'm going to tell you a little bit about, and then I'll tell you a little bit more kind of personal observations. But Chino earned his BSAD from MIT, so he has deep roots in the Boston area back in the 1970s, and a laurea in architectura at the Politecnico di Milano. Did I do reasonably well? Thank you. Where he is chair, professor of architectural and urban design. He's widely published in preeminent architectural and design publications. He's the author and editor of several books, too numerous to mention, but many of them very well known and very well regarded. He participated in the organization and the design of 4 of the trienniales in Milan, and he also displayed work in the 6th, 8th, 12th, and 13th Biennales in Venice. His installation, Copycat Empathy and Envy as Form Makers, was awarded a special mention by the jury in 2012. With his studio CZA, he has designed and realized many major buildings, public spaces, master plans, and what I think very interesting is renewal plans, not just for industrial areas, but also for agricultural areas and for historical areas. He's worked in places as diverse as Helsinki, Milan, Parma, Ravenna, Bologna, and Venice. His renewal of the former Young House factory site in Venice has been awarded several prestigious awards, among others that he's received over the course of his career. Tonight he's going to provide a critical review of his work as he strives to create the new while grafting them into existing built and natural landscapes. But really what Chino is first and foremost, and you hear this from students, is really a visionary with a very open mind who's trying to solve problems in a way that address issues of function, issues of form in a way that ultimately are beautiful and aesthetically pleasing, and really tries to bridge the old and the new in, I think, very thoughtful, grounded ways. So as I said, tonight he's going to do a critical review looking at it through the lens that he started to think about. So he's going to give us a conceptual frame for how he's come to think about what he's done over the course of his career. So I'm just absolutely delighted, as I say, to introduce Chino. Please welcome him with me up to the podium.
Can go off with the lights. I'm very honored to be here and a little bit stressed by it. Exams are never finished. And what I'm gonna talk about and show tonight is a sort of a split brain image of what we're doing, in a sense that the first part, it's a visual narration of some obsessions which has been going through, say, modern urban theory. The second part will be just experience, just daily hard work of architect and urban designer. And how these two are connected, I don't know. I mean, we all strive for unity, but many times we live in a state of contradiction. So I will ask you not to see the first part as some kind of theoretical base or foundation, the second one. I think there's some interesting cross-references between the two, but they're not in the form of a statement plus a work. This is what, to me, characterizes the difference between the modernist ideal that first you have some kind of manifesto proclaim, like the whole history of art of last century was first you have the Dadaist, the Surrealist, and then you have a Dadaist piece of art. Today, I think we live in ripples. We never know if our personal experience can sum up to be something more meaningful. Sometimes you're just on your own. But I think what is interesting is that you keep on seeing ideas and figures bouncing off and transforming and metamorphosing. All we think is original is not. So my plea is a plea against originality and thinking we're the newborns, baby. So I will argue this more during the thing. But I start from a very, very simple observation that everybody loves the historical city. And the paradox is that we built this environment, but we feel this almost as a second nature. We have a natural feeling in front of the historical environments. They seem to be born by themselves, something made by nature itself, and they solve a problem we have, which is the relationship between the individual dimension, almost a private one, the room as a shelter, something which protects us, and the way of being together. Streets and squares are connecting points between the individual dimension and the collective one. So we built this place, but we feel like it's always been there. And historical settlements also give us the illusion of being biodegradable, sustainable by itself. If you leave this fisherman village by itself, it will go back almost absorbed in a lake in few years. And how come this feeling is there? Something that feels like all civilization, the cultural, let's say, structure is strongly connected to the natural one. In a Levi-Strauss way of thinking, the legend the fisherman tells to his kid to teach him how to fish, it seems also connected to the biology of the lake. And even in the cultural version of the city, this is the famous and abused Nolli plan by Giambattista Nolli of Rome, it feels like is itself a natural process, in this case, the crystallization of a crystal of gelatin. But there was a point, we could cite something around the 1800, 1850, that the old city was not more suited to our needs. We felt it was too tight in a way. Its spaces were no more suiting what we did. So we tried to plan the new city, and one could say, the new city was planned, is sort of the engineer's century, is the century of sewers, of pipelines, and this image is very Marxist to me, the division between capital and labor, the factory and the ordered suburbs of the workers. But we thought that applying Taylorism, some kind of analytical thinking to the design of the new city, we could make it into at least ordered and very understandable environment. But since the beginning, the new city we were building revealed unexpected behaviors. What we thought was to be clean, it was dirty, the crime rate was high, the state of metropolis, the transformation to the city into the metropolis revealed a lot of unexpected problems. And today, looking at the contemporary cities, we are sort of astonished. One could say that the concept of city beautiful, the concept of beauty in a classical sense, it has to do with finiteness, proportion, perspective. But for some reason, around the 1700s, the concept of beautiful divided in two. It went to the sublime on one end, the terribility of a volcano, and to the picturesque or the graceful on the other time. It's like something like splitting in two. And can we read the contemporary metropolis as beautiful? Maybe no. It really, again, in front of its show, it feels almost like effect of nature. And as in Jurassic Park, it feels like we're making it, but it's escaping our control. The other big question is, when we look at the traditional landscape, the cities were quite well-defined entities. The world that bordered them divide them in a quite straight way from the countryside. But the picture of today's city, in this case Milano, have all the A, B, C, D ways to detect a melanoma. In a way, the city today is perceived as the cancer of the earth. Is the first generation really is worrying that we're doing a big damage to Mother Earth itself. I mean, this ecological problem is really, in our feeling, the main one. And what to do about it? Since its beginning, people has been thinking about what should be the model. Can we make new environments which respond to needs but also are reasonable? With some strange deviation. This is a diagram of the nuclear fallout, and in America, the suburbanization of America was sustained because of a Cold War thing, that if a bomb would occur in a city, it would kill much more people in the suburbs. So that's, let's say, is a wind-oriented direction of a nuclear fallout. You can recognize Chicago, St. Louis, somewhere here, Indianapolis. So there was a theory of against the concentration of the city because of the Cold War problem. And when I was probably 8 or 9 years old, this is 64, I'm 55, 9 years old, my father went to New York. He went to the big New York Fair, 64, and brought me back a book is called The World of the Future. I was absolutely convinced when I grew up I would live in this world with a little helicopter like the Jetsons. But to me, this image also represents the way modernist planning has been thinking about the question of designing cities. We thought past experiences would not be worth anymore. We should start analyzing things, analyzing function, the function of dwelling, the function of working, the function of moving, the function of entertaining, respond individually to all this function, and then put them back all together. And that would yield a new city. But things did not really go that way, and I rather live in this city. This is a picture by Olivo Barbieri. It represents something which many people call in different names. In Europe, we call it città diffusa, città estesa, middle landscape, cities and so on. This reality we're trying to describe. Many people compare this city to a surreal movie. I don't think it's surreal at all. It's much more like TV zapping. We enter a highway, we get out of it, we go play tennis in a bubble, we shut ourselves in a room in a residential enclave, we go to have fun in an entertainment center. It works very well. Even a child can use it. The only thing we are missing that this specialization of function, something left, something in between. In this case, the non-light-lit part, the black hole you have in the middle, the place for the gypsies in a way, is what is left by the separation of things. One could say in Venice, you don't need a playground because the whole city is a playground. So we are building this city, but we are missing the fecund overlapping of the old cities we left. And of course, if the analytical thought specializes single objects to respond to single things, who would guarantee the harmony of it all? This idea, if we have anatomy, what would guarantee the physiology of the new city? Many people, even Louis Kahn, which in our mind is what it was really the builder of modern monuments, when he thinks the plan of Philadelphia, he starts from the flow, almost the cars as the red blood cells of the city. And Le Corbusier is the first one who understands that the scale of the infrastructure really confronts directly itself with the landscape, jumping in a way the scale of the city. But if the architect was the king of the pack, the leader of the pack in the old days, if you go to Siena, 95% of what you see is architecture, new professions come out. The traffic designers who designs the radius of the clover leaf with science, and the landscape designer who goes beyond it. So the architect is only in a corner crying, nobody's friend, nobody loves me anymore. So he's left. Summer is a side dish. And this, let's say, biological obsession crosses modern urban theory. This is Victor Gruen, The Heart of the Cities, the Urban Crisis. You can, the name, the heart of the cities, we can talk about green lungs, we can talk about traffic arteries, things how many biological metaphors are embedded in modern city planning. The tree or flower-like image is like some kind of almost Jungian ideal that comes over and over again. In this case, in Bruno Tao, The Dissolution of Cities, with a little bit hippie-like rural communities. Or in Rudolf Schwarz, he read this not so well-known book. It's called The Construction of Earth, where he really think of new city as something. He's the first one who's talking about, let's say, Landschaft planning, landscape planning, something. So even the concept of landscape urban is not such a new one. Or when Hilbert-Simon, running away from the Bauhaus, he comes to America and he goes to, and in a way, this image of the fish spine model, but also the dead-end street, is very much the heart of the American suburb, where the privacy of the single-family home is assured by a hierarchical thing. So if you live there and you're friend with the other guy, you got to take your car, go to the roundabout, go on the highway, go back there, which is very different from the grid-like structure of the European cities. And even when the Smithson do their proposal from the center of Berlin, this amazing, I would say, even I would call it beautiful plan, is something which really does not understand what the city is. You can still recognize there the Brandenburg Gate, for one who knows Berlin, the Pergamon Museum, the Tiergarten, but they treat the existing street grid, they totally ignore it. Basically, they transform it into a set of urban highways, and they create a raised walk with these towers, almost a new Venice, where the existing morphology is like the canals, but the walking part is over it. And today, the word mega structure is still a bit fashionable, but something, can we conceive a city as a gigantic organism? I think no. And in the American thinking, if the single cell is the single family house, the blood cell is the car, let's say the aorta is the expressway, the heart is the commercial center. But, and this is where the name of my lecture comes out, in 1964, Christopher Alexander writes an essay called A City is Not a Tree. The argument of Christopher Alexander is he takes the tree as a, say, topological model where each node is connected by one, say, line to the other one. So you have single dwellings, which goes into neighborhood units, we go in clusters, go into villages and new towns. You can recognize that kind of planning we were saying before. And he's arguing that this is too hierarchical. Christopher Alexander says that the old city works rather as what he calls a semi-lattice, where each node is connected to the other one by more than one connection. So he thinks the tree model is too hierarchical. But the landscape or the natural metaphor in city planning, they come from a long way back. And while you read, I drink. I found this one particularly prophetic. Can we still believe in urban design? I'm committing suicide publicly here, but just to say that urban design is what keeps together the unit of the unit in a way of the dwelling with the city. Bologna, if you think of a city, is a series of porticos and single houses. But for the metropolis opens up as a landscape and encloses as a room. It's like there's something in between which is going out, or maybe we can just restore it artificially. This dimension of the landscape, almost the private unit in a big flowing landscape. This is very prophetic to me. So one could say, left the natural feeling of the traditional city while building the new one, we are obsessed by the problem of being as natural and as trustful or as good as nature. Then we can discuss about it. Harvard had, I'm dedicating this lecture to Stephen Jay Gould. He was a great biologist, and I think he is I don't know, I cry if I talk about him, in a sense that he's the one who really demonstrated that nature is fallible, one say. We attribute to nature this sort of perfection which is not hers. But then another matter is about techniques, something, the new city had, the progress has to do with the jumping, say, techniques became separated by the rest of society in a way, become a specialization. But then at the same time, all of a sudden we started to fill the city with technical objects, maybe street sign. I think how the landscape is filled with things which are produced by specialized techniques, something like the separated, we don't even see them. But then there's the engineers produce the city, and the flaneurs, the people who have nothing to do but drink Ascensium and wine, went into the station to have fun or to write poems, but then they discover techniques as a painterly subject. So if Monet revealed the great mystery of architecture, that architecture is like a sundial, he has to stay still, you don't need to make Times Square, because it's the sun which moves and colors the whiteness of the cathedral. Today's painters, in this case Jan Schneider, go to hitchhike and consider the highway as a painterly subject. But somebody tried to understand what was the design consequences of this. The seminal book, The View from the Road, from Lynch and Appleyard, in a way argued that since the car gives us a new perception of things, almost an erotic one, we keep on moving, somehow we need geographical points. One could call them monuments, even if this view, the grain elevator equals the capital. We need monuments as fixed geographical entities to orient ourselves in a sort of in a flowing landscape. Kevin Lynch, without the computer, drew himself all the sequence of the Boston Expressway and try even to some kind of musical notation to represent that in plan and section. And even Alison Smithson did this funny book, 1983, AS in the S, with the shape of the S. Again, try to understand what is this new landscape. It's like a navigator in a way. You have subjective views and maybe a topographical map. And again, in America, Tunnard tried to even see that at different speeds, our viewpoint changes from windshield. And he proposed not to get the American drivers too sleepy and get accidents, to change this is quite complicated thing. The upper diagram tells you that the streets in America were made by pieces of straight line with radiuses, which are directly connected. He proposed a more second derivative, I would call it, flow, both in plan and section, to get, say, a more contour-like thing of the American highways. And what is very interesting to me, that in each case, the monument, a little bit of Charles Moore sculpture, is used as a visual target. Today, with a computer, it's like having a machine gun. In the old times, when I did perspective by hand, I don't know how to do perspective by thing, I did one. Now you can just go, and you got to kill somebody. So one of these views has got to be beautiful. But are we doing architecture to suit this moving eye? This is what is called the red kilometer near Bergamo by Jean Nouvel. And as you stretch, the signs on the ground of the highway, it's a stretched architecture to acquaint for this very speed view. And there's a song by Leonard Cohen. It's called "Please Don't Pass Me By." I am blind, but you can see. It's a very famous song. And he said, and all of us dream, "Please don't pass me by." But is this the "Please don't pass me by" architecture? Something like eager to please. Andy Warhol said, to each of us, you got a quarter of an hour celebrity. Maybe we're so worried about, the distraction of people that we really need to be sexy that night to get him or her, So we pump up all the attributes we have. So are we so worried about what other people would look at us? An architecture all made to be perceived somehow. It's obsessed by perception in a fast world. But this perceptual mode of designing to control perception, again, has a history. This is Doxiadis, an architect, a Greek architect. He was obsessed by the idea that the Greeks had secret proportions. So he went to redraw all the Acropolis, which were points of views. He said the Greeks would, the Acropolis was irregular, but he said it contained secret sort of visual rays and was proportioned by that. And one could say, can we say some kind of narrative architecture, in this case the Adrian's Villa? This is what one could call it the first religious theme park from the 1500s, is the Sacromonte, but it's hard to explain what it is. Basically, it's a number of chapels reproducing the Passion of Christ, and this is the Kresge College by Charles Moore. The old architecture thought to be like a narration, something you like to have an architectural promenade. So in the city theory, in this case, Anvin prays that when you bend the street, you should make a name, and this is a not so well-known drawing by Le Corbusier, where he aggregates the Maison Dominant. Actually, he's quite picturesque. And if the École des Beaux-Arts, in this case Duran, said this is the step to follow to design any project. You trace some lines, you divide them up, and you build from the plan up. Stephen Hall, when he does the Milano project, he said, I reverse the classical way of doing. Classicist first draws the plan and then draws the perspective. I draw first the perspective and then I get the plan. So in a way, it's a method where perception comes first, then construction. Like in a way, the perceived image is stronger than the deep skeleton of the building. Can we say Frank Gehry is the legacy of McKimmett and White, this sort of picturesque, I would call it, architecture? And can we say the Getty Center is the son of the Hearst Castle? The city in a bottle kind of thing. Big millionaires in America, they always wanted to build their own world. And when they asked Julia Morgan, she was the architect of the Hearst Castle, say, what style is the Hearst Castle in his? And she said, I call it the style pleasing the client. Put everything together and try to create like a bonsai city. And while Mies van der Rohe was in 1929 was doing the seminal pavilion, in Barcelona you had the Pub L'Espagnol. It was a collection of all the most picturesque pieces of Spain, put it all together. Now it's very fashionable, you can drink very good beer. This is pictures when it was built and today. It's an architecture all made out of perception, all made out of sort of angles of views. And today, commercial architecture exploit all the techniques of picturesque planning and design. So the naturality of the circular city today is reproduced in a way by, this is a project by Gerde. Gerde is the most famous designer of shopping malls, where he prophetically conceived the shopping center as a reproduction of a medieval town. And this is the Serravalle outlet, is placed in between Milano and Genova. You just have it's 3 kilometers from the highway. You got a big parking lot. There's no, there's an empty watchtower. You got the icons of the old city with no content. And it's a surreal Magritte couldn't have not done better. Then, in a way, the globalism is represented by some kind of architecture with something in between, since between Milano and Genoa, something between the Milanese farmhouse and the Genovese, like Portofino painted architecture. Adidas were represented by a Baroque building. And you have the illusion it's a real city. I mean, my son said, Papa, can we go again in that fake city? They sell good Nikes things. And you got cameras all over. At night, somebody closes it down. I mean, it looks like a city. It even works at times like a city, but there's no cobble maker there. And Mies van der Rohe and Gropius, and they all frying their tomb. All what we call, the base of modernism was called structural truth. What is beautiful is true. The skeleton as a figure. That's the way it's constructed, and that's the way it's made. And on the upper floor, they're empty, and the windows are black painted back. And somebody told me, some people started there say, can I buy the apartment up there? There's no apartment up there, but people are starting wanting to live in this city. And it's a globalized product, but then you have sort of local adaptation. This is the same chain. They built it all over Europe. So basically, it's a main street with local adaptation, and you can be Belgian, you can be Spaniards. Depending where you go, you can give it different. It's like a swatch. It's a mechanism with different graphics applied on it. And what is interesting, that this mechanism is retrofitting the old cities. This is an existing medieval city in France that was abandoned. Somebody bought it, built a parking lot. You pay 10 euros to get. You can buy your grandma perfume soap. To the kid, you buy a candy. You just have a nice afternoon there. But it's a real. And this is Mont Saint-Michel, 12 o'clock in the morning. Visite historique. If you don't have the money to come to Europe, you can go to the Mediterranean Park in Tokyo. You have Florence and Paris, the aristocrat Paris, sort of, and Portofino all together. And some days ago, my 20-year-old daughter said, Papa, can you give me 20 euros? I said, what for? I have to go get my jeans cut, ripped. I said, I just wanted to slap her, but this is the pre-washed city. It's a city which is already like we have pre-washed jeans. You got it there. You just get all the bricks falling down already. And what is interesting to me, last night, this is the marvelous of internet. The slide I had, but the picture there I added tonight, is Disney presenting Epcot. And when Disney died, what was the book they found on his table? The Heart of the City by Victor Gruen. On his dead body, there was next to it. No, it's true. I read it on the internet last night. So there's, the visionariness of Disney. The story of Epcot is a very complex one. There's a strange connection between, utopia and commercialism, which you usually find separated. And Disney itself, it seems, is drawn the drawings of the first plan of Disneyland. But what is marvelous about Disneyland, it puts together nature and city. You have Main Street, and you have the alligators trying to eat you up, but you're not so scared because they know they're mechanical. And in a way, these two figures are what are closest to the commercial figures of architecture today. The monorail, the utopia of a techno-pastoral ideal, and the Main Street, the idea that the good old things always work. In a way, they represent what we are thinking of architecture. It's like going to the Friday evening to the cinema. Either you find an action movie or you find some kind of romantic comedy, something which has prefabricated feeling associated to them. And I'm almost finished with this first part. One could say the department store, it sort of is like a Cuckoo's Nest, which takes the complexity of the Market Street and sort of absorb it. It's like a sponge absorbing the complexity of the city into a building. And in a way, the city can die, could be destroyed by a neutron bomb. You really, if you reproduce the city in interior, then the city maybe might not need to be the same as it was. So, the enchanted castle of the Pacific Design Center, you have a structure with like Maison Domino, a regular grid, so it's very rational, but then inside you create some kind of almost medieval pattern of streets and squares. And in the North, American continent cities, since the colder it gets, the late 1800 or 1900 grid line is left to the delivery trucks, and we're rebuilding a series of skywalks and underground passages. We're rebuilding a new Middle Ages village, while the urban design is what is left outside somehow. And somebody told me, Chino, you just need a basketball thing on your door to be happy. And do we need the city? Something, maybe we just need to stay at us and just be connected. Maybe we just need an iPod with Eros Ramazzotti songs. And in a way, again, the prophetic 1965 bubble by Rainer Banham, if you look at the details, this is really, you just need to be connected, and you need some kind of amniotic sac to protect you, but you can be everywhere. Do we, in the Osaka World Fair, what's the name, the people, the avant-garde English people said, do we still need a city? Do we need the city? Can we dwell everywhere? This idea of colonizing the rest of the world, but what is, as you have the bird viruses, the city is metamorphosing again and again. You have this sort of gated community problem where when you go inside, you still have the feeling of a city, but the difference that this is not public anymore. This is called scanscape, which means it's pictures of places where to enter you need to have a card, a magnetic card. So what new kinds of genetic metamorphosis is the city going through? The new urbanism try to get nostalgia. So one could call it the gentle battle against the suburbs. They argue against the dead and things, some social mixture and so on. And one last word on this question. Many people, there's a recent New York Times guy who wrote Green Metropolis, and he's arguing about density as an ecological thing. It's true that to live in a city environment, you consume at least one-third of the energy, roughly, for gasoline, and one-half of the electricity. So for many reasons that we don't have time to discuss, density is much more, in a way, ecological. So we have the effect of density. In various parts of Europe, we are talking about density as a need to go back, not as a universal recipe, but some kind of way of looking at it to go back to it. And Raymond Anvin, in a second edition of Town Planning in Practice, he was arguing, some people accuse me to be not dense enough, but he makes an economical reasoning. He says, in the diagram, the more we build houses, it's true that we build more square meters, let's say. But on the other side, we need more roads to get there, so you erode the green space. So the black is the houses, the white is the green, and the gray is the streets. So in a way, you get less and less land because you need to build more roads to get there, so it gets less economical. So he's defending low density as an economical matter. But all modern city theories had to confront themselves with the problem of density, so the numerical issue was a main one. And Leslie Martin in 1975 tried to make some kind of algorithm. He tried to put together, the distance between the buildings, the sun problem, the heights of them, the density, so all this algorithmic point of view is not so new. You can date it something around 1965. But then in the end, he uses a very interesting argument. These are models made by his students, and is a plot of land, maybe, let's say, 200 meters by 200 meters, and these 5 samples are all the same quantities of density. He says, once we respond to numbers, with the same numbers, we can make very different models. We can make a little almost urban villa square, a courtyard building, towers, and so on. So he says, in the end, the choice is still cultural. What kind of city do we want? So if on one side we are dreaming more and more of the Lone Island. This is the famous Dubai intervention where each man has the right to a deserted island. In a way, I come from Europe, and I love Europe because, this is the famous drawing by Le Corbusier, thinking of Europe as a big highway side. But I found this map representing Europe as a town, the central part of the Alps, the city center is something around, Holland, the Abar there, with the Pride side. And this week is the Fashion Week, the Salone del Mobile in Milano, so everybody's in Milano this week. But just to say that I like this feeling of Europe, of being close enough to dialogue. You can take a plane or by the day, but still you have different neighborhoods. So in a way, one could say the city, these are taken from Christopher Alexander pattern language, it's very romantic. I think we love the city still. Maybe we're not able to build it anymore, but we're still very affectionate to it. So it's still a place full of romanticism. And I would say I finished this first part. And now what do? We get some, template. These are very sexist templates. From the profession of the architects in the old days was very, how to do the point. You notice this? I got it here in Cambridge, is a sort of naked woman, and this is an Italian one. So for some justice, I also found some standard men. Just to say this just represented how sexist was the profession of the architect 20 years ago. Somebody stole them to me. I'm very unhappy because my little template women here to make the curves are not there anymore. Just to say that, once you're an architect, you don't own your means of production. So in this case, all these nice words are said, forget them, and then I just start to show what, in a private dimension one can do. This is my very romantic loft. And this is the only small-scale project I show. Actually, I did more than this. It was an installation I was required to do at the Maxi, the Zadi building in Rome. There was an opening, and they put together artists and architects. I said, but I'm an architect. I respond to needs. I'm not able to do an artwork. And they said, what should I do? Oh, do something about, just do what you want, basically. You just have 3 by 4 by 3.5 meters to do. So I said, what the hell do I do? How can I invent the content? Because I'm not used to do that. The content is given by the situation. So I said, okay, we're in Rome. And I took exactly the shape, the 3 by 4 by 3.5, and somehow Rome this is the Borromini San Carlino vault, and I call it in the body of the city. I wanted to make something which was self-referential, something had to do with this, and the color is explicitly the liver color. I went to the butcher to buy a liver. So it was something had to do something between architecture and a piece. When you eat the liver, you have these big veins in the middle when you fry it. So, and this is built in place. It was very cheap. Was almost done by ourselves. But when people walked in, they walked on this floor. And the floor went like that. They sort of was grossed out. This first monumental splatter installation. So it was just a game about the things I've said before. Is the city a body? And is the Pantheon a heart? Okay, so this is real life. This is a very small neighborhood park in eco-compatibile, high energetic. Can you do shit saying it's sustainable? In Europe, we're producing sustainable shit architecture. That's the point. Sorry about the word, but that's the. So sustainability is becoming the justification of all the horrors we're doing in Europe. I don't know what it is in America, because it's good by. It's certified good by good-hearted. Okay, so we had to do just a stupid plot, a very small neighborhood park, which had a small parking, a children's game, and in Sant'Onà de Piave, where the river exondates, so it goes out of the thing, and basically it was smaller than a real park. It's something between a square and a park. But this is actually a Google map, so it's in the middle of nothing, just next to a highway, and it was just a cutout. So it was very difficult because it was very also difficult to access it. It was just for that neighborhood. So we just, was very cheap project. We used some cobblestones embedded in concrete, and then you have dams because it's a place where the water of the river always gets out. So we use the dam as a theme to embrace a little bit of space because the surroundings were just quite cheap for architecture. I just go quickly through the thing. You know, a landscape, I'm not a landscape designer, but you have to wait a long time for this to become an oak, a secular oak. So, you know, the trees, they gotta grow. So you need patience to be a landscape designer. This is the children's game. And since children, Italian mommies are very anxious, and they always, they love to gossip, but then, where's my kid? Where's my kid? So we made a sort of a trap, like a lobster trap for the kids, so they could control the exit. And this was the night we were checking the lights and said, Architect Zucchi, you want to go up in a crane to do a picture? And I was a little bit afraid to go there, but I took it up. But while we were doing it, the people from the neighborhood just jumped in, and I realized I'm very self-critical about architecture, but this night was like a spontaneous party. I understood we gave them something which was what they did not expected, but it's like a nice gift. You know, you can give a gadget, you can give a pen, you can give many things, but the nice gift is something which is not completely expected, but then you use it. You know, somehow it's not a gadget, but it's not just a nice tie. You can get some kind of suburban romanticism. Then this is a little bit more heavyweight project. It was right next to the German-speaking. This is Bolzano, is the German, and this is the highway going to Austria, and it's right. The plot was right in between a very big industrial zone and the fields, and the committee is called the Saleva. They do basically, it's like the North Face of Italy. They produce very nice jackets and mountaineers. So the brand is Mountains. This is the first project. Basically, it's logistics plus offices plus a very big climbing hall and a bar. And this was the first grade. And we put this. This is south and this is north. So there was a parking lot, the showroom, but then this overlooking here. And then the client calls me overnight to say, Zucchi, you passed the first phase, but I don't want to walk from my parking all the way to there. So I called my partner and said, you know, should we be prostitutes for one night? And I say, yes, so we'll turn it. And we turned it. So this is the final version. We put the offices here, but we still kept that. And we won the competition. And this is the big logistic. This, I don't have pictures. This is an amazing warehouse. And you have this, and this place, I don't have pictures because it was not finished yet. It's a marvelous place where you drink beer and you see climbing things. So we had a strange situation where it was like say, a brand architecture on one side, but also has to do with this quiet mountain pre-mountains. And it feels very much the weather, and toward the highway is totally enclosed, and it's got this sort of blue-gray skin. Basically, it's a big warehouse on the back, and this is, you have a big door here, you can open it so people can drink beer and see, and this is very successful. It's become the hot spots of all the north of Italy. The parking lot, I'll just go quickly. This is let's say the backside where you have the entrance for the trucks, because basically it's a big logistics space. It's very sustainable. It produces. We won the Casa Clima prize for. So it produces more energy than so it even sells energy to the city. Very cheap. It's didn't cost more than. Just to say that this sort of interface between, so the highway, when you enter the highway, this is the access to the route, and you just see it. So it's in between this sort of landscape ideal, but if you go back, it's even like a chameleon. In this case, you almost hide in the landscape. And this is seen from a castle up there. This is actually Reinhold Messner Castle, interiors. So this is all the logistics of it. And this is Reinhold Messner opening he was in a jury, actually. Big band. Okay. Next. This is a small private competition, a 3-day competition for an office building in a plan by Van Egeraat. Van Egeraat is a European architect. And the plan wanted, the master plan gave some kind of oval or ovoid things, but because of depth of the buildings, we had to narrow it down. So these are all almost evolutionary schemes, and the end scheme is something like that. About fire stairs, I don't explain the whole story, but just to say that we had to slim it down to meaningful depths. And the client told me, Architect Zucchi, will you please stop? I mean, I've been building office buildings all my life, and I know more than you what an office building is, and the perfect depth is 60 meter 50. So stop with all these blobs, just do me a slab of 60 meter 50. And this is exactly 60 meter 50. I did exactly what he wanted. And then since the main orientation is east and west, and everybody knows that the sun goes down east and west, to block the sun when it's low, you need vertical brise-soleil. We did that, and we also turned them a little bit on almost a decoration of it. Also, they save a lot of energy because they do not let the facades heat up. But of course, there are excuses. If you like it, nobody ever asked me about this brise-soleil because they like it, you know. Yesterday on the magazine, there was a Lotto Shoes advertisement and used it as a backdrop. So when people like things, they don't ask. But they have a purpose. And we make the jogging ring on the top. And this is also the screen which screens all the plants. And it's a building which changes very much with the light. When it's dark light, it's gloomy, and then it reflects the light. It's very, very reactive. It's almost like a tree trunk. And it gets all gold when the sun goes down. At the night, you can disco. Now, this was the opening party. Okay. And this we won. This is work in progress. This is the Lavazza headquarters in Torino. It was an incredible area. Right, it was an industrial, basically was an energy plant, but right close to the center of Torino. And it has also beautiful views. So the city is willing to give to Lavazza all this area if they save these 2 buildings and this become public and they make a square. So it was an industrial area. This was the warm-ups. And this is the final project. They got us crazy. I mean, I hate the Lavazza people because they don't know what they want. But basically, so this was the area, and this is the office building, and this becomes a public square, and this building is given to the public. So it's a sort of private, public joint where the square is public. This is becoming public. This is a side office, and that's the office building with an atrium here, which is connected. And this building it will remain, but the Lavazza is going to be a coffee museum or something. And we decided not to break down the perimeter block, to make an outward looking, to give to everybody the views. We also considered to keep the perimeter, but something very ecological, very all these green roofs. Just to say that is a strange, I don't think it's blob architecture even can look like, because to me this question of the edge, how to transform, to metamorph, say a city block into something which is somehow reversing, but then you get all these true things which were not there. So to me it's very urban, even if it does not have this perimeter. That is just work in progress. Okay. Then this is another competition for the Barilla people. So this sort of food. They have these sort of buildings from the 80s and this situation. It's a very big factory, very interesting one. And the area around Parma has all these farmhouses, so they're very tied to an agricultural view of the land somehow. So they ask for just almost a make-up, a new atrium of the offices which are here, this is existing, but also a projection in the future where they have the training center, the entertainment center, and so on. So the project was this, but also some kind of master plan of expansion of all these, say, Barilla houses. So this is existing building. We build a new atrium and a new auditorium here. So it's something in the reform of existing building they did not like. But this is the centerpiece where, so we refaced the existing building. This is just a work in progress for the model. But basically, this is the new image where is the entrance common to the two buildings. We use this almost farmhouse feeling, but it's sort of modern flying. This is the main, say meeting hall. The atrium which joins the two buildings. So some try to find some kind of farmhouse silhouette in a contemporary way. And then Benetton asked to do a facade in Rue Neuve in Bruxelles. Actually, Zara and H&M opened up in front of him, so this was a native facade. Basically, it's just a facade design, and we proposed two versions. This was one which had almost a knitted metal mesh, but he's very classical, so he liked best the second version, which is this. And to be sincere, this is the main square of Brussels. This bourgeois, merchants architecture, somehow we have a feeling this is a commercial building, this is a commercial street, but also to give some kind of hint of urbanity. So basically, they're very plain urban facades with this motif, this sort of almost cardboard, corrugated cardboard motif. How to do a brand architecture again with some urbanity. A church, the most difficult task for an architect, and this was even more so because it was a workers' quarter and a very tight one. I'll go quickly through it. So it has a long story. It is the rebuilding of a church which was communist priests. I don't know if there's something like a communist priest, but in the 60s they had these workers' quarters and these sort of left-wing priests. So we had to be very tight, not it's very non-spectacular church in a workers' neighborhood, very tough neighborhood. And then, since the real monuments of the new quarters are the high, you can't go high as this thing, we try to embrace some public space. And we use the belfry to screen off a little bit the house. And a church is also a place not to stay. Kids love to play soccer. And everybody loves to eat. So after eating, you get also the holy food, communion, the host. But they love it. I mean, it's very strange because this priest was very worried about a modernist church. But then he embraced me. This was the opening, and then he was really happy about it. But it's a difficult theme, of course. Okay, so the addition and renovation of the Turin Car Museum, the light orange is the existing building with a building from the 60s, and this is the addition. So this is the building which was like a drive-in building built in 1963, and this is what it looks like. So it has a parkway side, and this the Aerotor del Lingotto. Very difficult because we had to keep up all the old building. And we did this addition, but also the idea was to completely renovate the way you access the building, because these spaces were just service parking spaces. So we had one entrance coming from the city. So let's say the plexiglass is the new part. We covered the court, and we wrapped around all this glass skin to keep the parts together. One of the most. So the existing building, you enter here, but this was just warehouses. So they didn't have any outlook. It was just storage for cars. And we just lower it down. So we did not touch very much, but the entrance becomes here. So this was the existing situation, but there was no lookout. This, you just enter, went through the building into this court, and the entrance was here. This was just deposits. They were underground. And so the new building has cafeteria, library, and all this atrium. And this is the old part and the addition. So this was the section. You see, this was just covered. It's just, and we just lowered that, so this becomes transparent. This cost 1/10 of the Maxi. The Maxi cost 8,000 euros a square meter. This cost 800. So we could have made, not just to say that, I'm not praising myself, just to say that many times the budget is so low that you got to do, almost build it yourself. And you have all the escape stairs into this double skin. This is a back silkscreen glass in two shades of color, so you can see through. And then this central atrium, we made this very sophisticated climatic studies. And the roof, this is sort of south-north, so we made the beam so deep so not to get any strong lighting. So the beams are brissolets themselves. And actually, the layout, we didn't do the exhibition design. You go up to the top floor, and then you spiral down. So there was a very strong inversion of the existing circulation. So you take either, you go up and then go down. And then I want to touch for a moment the issue of housing, which is a touchy one. You know, my chair, I'm a vice professor in urban design and housing. And this is the house the architects like, and this is the house people like. So there's a war going on. Which one would you buy? I don't know. Maybe I buy this one. But to me, they're both let's say, kitsch, in a way, the extremes of the caricatures. The first one is, you know, what would be a house which wants to be a pure piece of art. Even the elevation is upside down, you know. And this is the house just like the coziness, the cozy romantic ideal. And when architects, they insist, like Le Corbusier in Pessac, an anonymous thing puts the tears, they make people cry. So, you know, this is the Pessac house by Le Corbusier after some years of an anonymous try to make it to his own desires. But then we would love, this picture I took, I think in Delft, in Holland, we will love to have, you know, nice veranda, we know this, you know, to be autonomous, something, but also next to the cathedral. I mean, can we have domestic intimacy but also urbanity? That's a dilemma. So then I had the occasion once to work in Holland. I made a lecture many years ago, and Peter Bruin, he's the head of Architect and CA, he said, it's okay, I like what you say, maybe in some years I'll give you to do something. And then he called me up and said, you want to do a house in thing? This was like a boulevard, and you had to build single-family houses, so he called me up, and he sent me down this client. To build there, you had to be approved by the master plan. So this is Mr. Van Straten, he's a dentist, and his wife, and they came down to Milano, and they said, you know, okay, we like this and that, we have 3 kids, this, and we like, my wife likes to cook, you know, in a nice thing. And then I said, okay, you tell me the program, I understood. Now tell me what you really want. And they said, no, we would never dare, we're such a famous architect, you know, no, please tell me. No, we would never dare, no, please tell me. So she takes out house and garden, said, I would like a terrace like that. I said, okay, maybe I will not give you that exactly, but I will try. But I will try to. Then 20 days later, this was this day, I go to Amsterdam and I present my draft solution to them in front of the master planner. And then in the afternoon, you recognize this is Fritz van Dongen, he's the partner of Architect and CA. they take us around in a very romantic, nice boat. And this guy, the client said, Architect Zucchi, let me cheers, because you don't know how worried this morning I was driving up from Enschede, which is 2 hours by car. And I was thinking driving, I put all the money of my life in this house. And what happens if I don't like Architect Zucchi's design? How can I dare to tell him? You know, and now I saw the design, I love it, and so and I almost start crying. And I said, okay, maybe this house will be published somewhere. But you know, to me, this is your house. Okay, so this is the house. It's quite conventional because also had quite strict. They tried to do a master plan, and what they love is this living room, and this is the cozy room. And then I made, this is the preliminary design, a TV which shifts. So basically, in the winter days, you can be very cozy and watch the baseball game here, and then when you have friends, you watch them here. So you know, you get the. So the idea is to bend the house, just a suburban house, to embrace the garden, let's say. And the plan wanted a quite stately outer facade, and this is the back facade. Originally it was meant in glass, but then we had a very cheap budget. So the idea is to build some pergolas which would just try to get some embrace. So this is I don't have the total finished. So the thing is, can a house have some kind of stately building up the public space? And the backside is built out of oxidized zinc. And the other day I called Mr. Van Straten and said, come on, I never had really made pictures of the finished house. The garden's not there. Can you send me a picture? This is the stair going up. And then he sent me this picture. So this is the lived-in house with the garden. And they sort of, the bricolage, they did not completely finish some of the things. They put up things. But it's their house that they love it. So I think we're touching really, we don't be populistic. With the house question touches really people's life. I mean, it's a very delicate theme to me. Then more apartment houses. This is the big plan by Cesar Pelli in the center of Milano, and we won a competition for a block, which is right next to it. It's right here. So, and this is historical city. So basically, it's an interface between a very big intervention and the fabric. And this was the original project. We did sort of an open block. This was it. But the client felt that this was too tight, you know. So he pushed me for 2 years to take all these volumes here, put it here. And I resisted a bit, and then I did it. So this is the final. I left still the garage here to make some kind of income. He convinced me that there was a bigger block here, and I'm convinced it's not so bad. But basically you have this, and there's a sort of a misalignment of this Cesar Pelli thing with the street, so this is also to correct a little bit of that. It's a quite high-end urban house. This is a sketch of the main facade. This is just a study model. And so there's two ways of entering, through the entrance, and this is a common concierge, and this is the entrance to the car. So we try to keep some kind of private garden feeling. These are just construction side the other day, and this is to say the part facing the garden. It's the most vintage looking. It's like the new Cinquecento by Marchionne. I don't know if I over-tipped the sort of the old. We made these bow windows. This is the Cesar Pelli. But you see, the house is next to it as this. So I don't know if I can get back from this point. And yes, a couple of days ago they sent me just a picture of the. So I you know, when you follow construction day by day. Okay, this is just a stupid, quick competition about a guy who wanted offices and his own private villa on 3 floors. So this is this height and this is this height. The back side. Just a little bit in tradition of these terraced houses. This is Gio Ponte. Okay. I'm heading toward conclusion. This is a very, 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 very dense social housing scheme for the Expo. Basically, the workers of the Expo will live here and then they rent out the apartments. And I didn't do the master plan. We're doing the open spaces, initial place, and 2 of these 2 towers. And they were so damn dense, we said, let's make a canyon in between. So this is, I have this sketch, it's called the Blue Canyon, something stepping up a little bit. So it's a, see, it's because it's the cheapest building I'm building, is all made out of overcoat plaster. And it has to have two states, one for the workers of the expo and then to rent it out. So it's very sophisticated, the fact that what you build when you don't build. And since it was a quite high scale and is done by the cheapest material, I can just use very small windows. I could not even do, I didn't have even the money almost to do parapets. We tried to do, I want to say some graphics. So basically this is what we call overcoat plaster, is where you got insulation outside and then you put a net. So basically it's the cheapest construction and also the quickest construction imagine. So the windows are very traditional. They don't even have parapets to save money. Okay. This is in Ravenna. It's basically just a big industrial yard which had a plan, and then they called Stefano Boeri to revive this plan, and he changed the thing and he made a big park. But nobody knows yet if this area, which is still belongs to the state, will be kept public. So now, the circulation is here, and you enter here because it's basically it's a dead end. It's like a way. This is not. It's like the docklands. So we did the building on the Boeri master plan here, but we thought it was too optimistic as it was, and this part here, I think is gonna. I'm not saying never gonna get public, but the problem is, can you do something now for tomorrow without knowing if the tomorrow, sort of a sliding doors principle. And Ravenna has this Byzantine mosaics, and again, this was the cheapo houses, just plaster. So this is, we never know if this is gonna become really a promenade. Now you enter from there. So it's a double-faced. So this is the way it is now. You just have concrete factories there. So it's a house in the middle of an industrial yard. And so this is now it's gated. You know, they shoot you if you walk here because it belongs to the state. So let's hope for the best that this become a promenade, but then this looks on the other side. See, this is a gate. You can't cross here. So this is the side toward the city by now. And we had this sort of bridge, and this apartment is really lovely. People, this is the first one who got sold. Okay. This is a master plan by Cisapelli, and we are doing this sort of courtyard building near Parma. It's a very simple, sort of typical suburban, one stair for 3 apartments block, 3-4 stairs. And the big difference I was trying to explain, Cisapelli, in Holland, you can walk in somebody's apartment on the ground floor. People in Italy, they really want to fence off. That's a real sociological difference. They would never live on the ground floor without some kind of fence. So we had to transform a scheme somehow, and then also the law required some kind of almost patio-like on the ground floor. So we had this problem of closing in and having types. So this is like semi-patios on the ground floor. Okay, and another competition we won in Bologna, and basically that pieces of a master plan we did not design. These plexiglass are our pieces. I try to go quickly. Mixed office and housing building with some kind of commercial in between. And this, we started construction on that. This is free market housing and this is social housing. So the next, we like to mix very much things, but then of course you have 2 different price ranges. So and in quite dense situation, we try to have some kind of standardized construction, but some kind of, this is a mock-up of the facade with different color bricks, because Bologna is all made out of red bricks. So I said, let's use bricks, but let's do it a little bit in a Dutch color. And this was just 3 days ago. It was not very nice weather. They sent me by internet. So these are very fresh. I haven't even seen it this stage. It's just pictures. what is the level, when would you get too decorative? I mean, that's, we're always on the verge of being too pretty. This is another lot, which is a little bit more tough. Housing and offices. Okay, this is a scheme I did. A real estate person called me from Holland and said, you want to do this competition? And I say, okay, cool. Then I went up with a scheme, and I say, we're going to give you a landscape designer. It's called Ludwig Ballion. I think he also taught in Harvard also. He's a well-known landscape designer from Holland. And then we meet, and I put my scheme, and after 2 hours I say, okay, what we do, we mix. And the client taps on my shoulder, say, no, architect Zucchi, can you please come in the other room for a moment? I said, you didn't understand. You're the architect, you do the facade. The landscape designer does the master plan. I say, I'm sorry, in Italy usually it's the other way around. Okay, and then, so the master plan actually is not mine, is by Ludwig Ballion. But this is interesting because in Holland, there's a much stronger relationship with the landscape design and urbanism. In Italy, the landscape designers are the people who put flowers on what the architects do. In the end, all it does is the developer. So, and I said to Ludwig Ballion, can I maybe move just 2 degrees there? Yeah, but maybe no, so okay. But again, not really just the facades. But we had this palette, this cascading palette. They wanted a landmark tower, but also was called Cascade, the thing. And you know, this question of finding different lifestyle living together in a place. Some houses are really related to the ground, some to the water, and so on, and even a tower. So I like this sort of 3 scales of the buildings. They also have different architecture palettes. We won the competition by quality, but our real estate guy didn't want it by money. So in the end, okay. And this is a competition we just won. Is near Torino. Is a workers' quarter and is placed by Pirelli. Just social housing in the middle of nowhere, just in industrial zone. Very bad situation because the city is a suburban city. So. But then the program is quite interesting because it mixed social housing, free housing, sort of, you know, shops, a school, a commercial thing. So it's really how to make almost try to find some connection to the existing city, but basically it's just a piece of factory cut out and a new housing there, which should continue here, but nobody knows. So there's sort of a master plan giving 2 green, say, buffer zones and some kind of thing. So we are part of a master plan. Nobody knows it's going to ever happen. So we tried, this is the school, we tried to, inside the master plan, let's say it's an essay about diversity. So this is the commercial area, the school, some kind of central square, some middle high rise with patios, some linear buildings, some almost patio houses. We just won this, so this is we're just starting working on this. But also, what is the nature of the public space in this kind of programs? Because, you know, even if you do the shape of a square, do we have the program really to sustain it? That's the main question. So we try to make an open air market of the school, you know, maybe use the shopping center to have a face over there. So today, many times, you have to bend the scheme to respond to that, but we try to make a scheme which was flexible. So the shape of the open space could have just towers or courtyard buildings. And then this is all where the public services are. So we try to cluster to make the open space as an attractor of all these services. And of course, you respond to all this kind of, I don't want to go into this, you know, all these social housing kind of issues about the diversity of lifestyles. But beside the typology apartments, we really point on the center space. And we experiment a little bit with some patio houses. So we'll see how it goes. A master plan in Lugano, which is in Switzerland. This is public and this is private, the yellow. But the main motor is a new tunnel which goes out and has a roundabout and enters the city. So this is the situation now. They do a tunnel. So the entrance to the city is through this. And this is a master plan. You see this is the way the tunnel comes out and the roundabout and you enter. And this is a sort of park and rides structure. So we want this master plan. I go quickly. And they liked very much how we integrated, say, infrastructure, open space design. It was very difficult patchworky situation for the property lines. And the street people liked very much this one. And they said, if you make it, if you turn it into a sound barrier, we'll pay for it. So right away we turned into the sort of sound barrier. And we were designing it. And now there's phasing. They built the tunnel, but now not yet a roundabout. So this is the tunnel coming out of the mountain. And they called us up, said, Zucchi, can you do just a temporary setup for like 5 or 6 years until... So this is just basically a decoration around the mouth, because the thing would continue this way, but now there's a temporary road design. This is green, actually, this is just finished. So it's the temporary entrance to the tunnel. And we designed this sort of very cheap, but they like it very much because it's like a gateway, it's a temporary gateway for the city, and everybody likes it. Just to say that themes come out many times almost in a bricolage way. Okay, Helsinki, which is a low-rise town, and we are doing a plan here, and which is a station dividing the city in two with this bridge. So this is a situation of a suburban station with a directional center and a housing scheme, and this is what it looks like. And the station is here, so it's quite boom. And this part, since they're moving the harbor, this part of the tracks is gonna be dismissed. So the city asked a very, very high density scheme, mixed schemes here. And now the street to go to the highway is this one. They will make a new one going like that. So this will become an urban thing. So it was a very difficult project. See, the new street is gonna be this. So to reurbanize this street and to build a business center here and housing here and over the bridge. So this is the station. In addition to the station, the bridge is this one, and we built a shopping center, and this is the business center, and this is housing. So how to create a piece of a city right on top without closing completely off the tracks, because it's in the middle of the tracks, so also the train go underneath here. And this is the bridge with a new canopy, the square. And they liked it very much. They translated it to a master plan. But in the meantime, the market for offices went down. So they asked us to design just a detailed plan for this area. But the innovation was they wanted higher towers, but also housing on top of offices. So this is a more detailed plan we did 5 years later. And the height issue is a very big one for Helsinki. But the interesting part is that the top is housing and the bottom is offices with some communal spaces in between. And this is a caricature as an architect saying, I hope I'm not bold, I'm going to there, but not yet, saying, you know, at that time they had a referendum about minarets, you know, about Muslims. And they said, I hope they will not ruin my nice plan with all these pointed minarets. So it's just to say that this project are quite discussed by the people. And then they asked to do some sample towers, because they say, we want to do high rises, but we don't want to make them ugly. Can you demonstrate they can be beautiful? Because they had cases of high rise people do not like. And what we tried to do is really to design the feet of you know, it's really a dense scheme, but going up, because there's also, this is the entrance to the subway. And so it's a sort of stepping up, but also always try to open the atriums of the buildings to some kind of open space. This is the lower floors with the and everybody has a sauna, so you see all these are little saunas. This is a communal children's garden. And what I think we really design is the open space, is the foot of the towers. It's the entrance to the highway, to the subway. So I think our real design is this one. And since we come from Italy, we export some towers, but also the public space. This is San Gimignano, so this goes in of this. I skip this. This is a plan for Tirana. But I skip it because I think you're getting bored. Let's go see what's next. Okay, we already done 2 projects more. This is Milano, and we got a lot of dismissed industrial areas, and this was the former Alfa Romeo factory site, very big site. The area we're working on is this one. Very complicated story. I don't want to go through it, the political story of it, but after many years of political thing, somebody bought it and gave to Gino Valle. Gino Valle was an old master of Italian architecture, the plan. So this is the master plan by Gino Valle of the whole area. It was a commercial center. This is existing old people's home, a garden. This is the fair and a new square with some offices and some housing. And they called me and said, "Do you want to do one house here?" And I say, "Sure." And then, for some reason, Gino Valle was old and they didn't want everything by one hand, so they gave me more and more. So I did the master plan of this whole area under the supervision of Gino Valle. So this is the end work where we work together. So basically we did the master plan, this part and the design, and this diagonal axis is really the main thing by Gino Valle. So that's the part we designed. And basically it's social housing, these 2 and these 3. This is an office building using the facade of the existing building and some free market housing and the diagonal connecting on the other side. So this is this, and this is social housing. This is the existing facade, and this is free market housing over the park. And in Italy, you have a law where you have to have the bathroom with direct ventilation. This prevents depths. So basically, we cannot go on Dutch types because one of the bathrooms has to be on the facade. See, you've got one can be there. So this is very unusual depth. We had so many surfaces to accommodate that it's very unusual for Italy. I even had to notch it in the building to get some light to the kitchen. So it's very, very dense. And we try to work on the interfaces, this sort of screen-like screen of terraces. So one side toward the city, this is the sort of southwest side. Now it's full of green. These are pictures just when it was built. And the towers, this is also social housing. We try to build very cheaply, but with some variation. And also, this was sort of an edge block. So this is the diagonal projected by Gino Valle. And what to me is important, that the context, we try not to be something too different from that. We're not copying the context, but we try to accept what was around it and really make it permeable. The main thing was they wanted to let the people go through and go to the park. And to smile to the city. Even we didn't have any really commercial program there, but we tried to be as permeable as we could in respect to the context. It's a kind of acceptance of the context, which to me is very important. This is the typical Milan architecture. Milano was heavily bombed during the war. So this is the architecture from after Second World War. And we also tried to pick it up a little bit without any direct references. And this is a building by Cacciadomignoni. He's an old master. He's still alive. He's like 99 now. And in the end, I realized I copied a little bit his crowning. But then this is a picture of him, and this is Cino, and baby Cino, this is me. So I met him in the street and say, "I give you my book on Milanese courtyards if you sign me up." And I said, "To my baby Cino." So I pretend I'm his legal son. So are we sure we always have to be that original? Aren't we a little bit obsessed by originality? This was the existing facade, which was a quite ugly facade actually, but we kept it as a memory. This was the Alfa Romeo cafeteria building. This is Gio Ponti Montecatini building in Milano. So we have this tradition of some kind of urban modern in Milano. the free market houses. I actually like better the social houses that free markets want. But these have richer materials and bigger terraces. And the apartment a little bit bigger and more luxurious. And they have strange variation in color. There's 3 colors, 2 by 2. So this is say violet and cobalt, and this is green. And also the amount of the stone, light and dark stone, is different. So they all look alike, but not quite. And this is a tradition of modernist houses, very high quality Milano. But what I like most and what I care most is about, the quality of public space. I think what's very important is the way you touch the ground. Okay, last projects. Venice, which, how can you date Venice? It's like going out with Nicole Kidman. You're not, somehow you think the photographers jump out. You don't know really how to deal with that, But also Venice for us is almost a strange thing because it's the most man-made city, but it's also like a meander. Is it the most natural city in the world or also the man-made city in the world? We don't know. It's the union of the two. And John Ruskin in A Stone of Venice was obsessed by this relationship between nature and capital. He was arguing the Renaissance architects were bad guys, and the happy medieval stone masons would just sing, drink, and sculpt the nature. And this is, again, they're all taken by the Stones of Venice. Somebody is telling me his time is going because my pointer is going. And this, it's interesting because the question of the profile of a mountain and the molding of a capital, this natural state. So this is Venice today, and we work in there. So it's a little bit the backyards of Venice. And this is the way the area looked like. It was a factory. It was a watch factory. And this is what people think of Venice. So there was almost a contradiction between the two, with what was existing, which was this, almost a Bauhaus building, and what people expected Venice. So this was a competition in 95. We won this competition, the area as it was, and it was a totally... The other day I sold my old car, and I found the keys, and it was the keys of all this area. I had the keys. I mean, it was a total... so how to open up a precinct? So this was an existing school. This doesn't work anymore. But the whole area was just basically closed off. And this was the competition design. I went to see the drawings, and the computers were not invented yet. We had the first renderings. This was the final master plan, and the black buildings is the one I did. That's Google. Let's Google again. So the whole point is about opening up the backs of the laguna. This was a dead end, complete dead end. So the question is how to bring people to the water, but also have... And Gunnar Asplund, he's the most famous of the Swedish architects, did this competition design in 1910 of the Royal Chancellery. And this I used for my students what I call urban grafting. You can't even see his design is like grafted in the city. But then the back elevation is a big office building. He just came back from Venice, and he designed this sort of almost elevation like on a canal. It looks like on the Grand Canal. So what kind of architecture can you do today in Venice? That's San Marco, but you prohibit it to architecture. But you cannot do something like that for hygienic reasons. So this was the existing building, and this is its renovation. It's basically a heavy renovation of an existing building. That's it. And that's the new square, let's call it. Another existing building who knocked it down and what substituted it. New building. That's the new canal. We built this canal. So it's It's quite heavy intervention, I would say. I'm almost done. Be patient. And that was the existing situation. And it was a dead end. You crossed the bridge and you arrived there and it was totally enclosed. So basically it's like a microsurgery. We cut this path. And in Venice you just need to cut that much. This is social housing actually. It's very, very cheap. And this is, many people from abroad, they say, Zucchi, are you from Venice? I say, no, I'm from Milano. Because they associate me to this. You know, when you some kind of motive, for some reason, I'm obsessed by this building because this building is the one I'm known abroad from country. And I didn't know why it was doing it. It was nothing special, just a social housing. And I had a lot of trouble with the client. The client said, you're crazy, modernist architect, you're gonna make me lose a lot of money. You wanna take the eaves away from a building. You're gonna die, you know, all this. I got all these big menaces. This is the cut I was talking about. So the size of it, you can almost, you know, and also we cut through that building. So from here you go to the square. And just got 3 types of windows basically. Got the, you know, the living rooms, the tall are the bedrooms, and those are bathroom and kitchens. So it's a very standardized building. And it's the closest things you could do with respect to historical Venice for hygienic reasons. How to do a house in Venice? Take a butcher paper. Put on the old record by Fabrizio André, he's a folk singer. Think of your first love and cry a bit and draw the windows where the teardrops have fallen. Very simple. Did we try to do picturesque architecture? Did we try to do modern? We don't know yet. And we say, chi di spada ferisce. Who wounds with a spear, he gets wounded by a spear. And when I turned 50, my wife said, you know, there's a painter painting the Jungas. So, you know, I was talking about painterly, and then I end up being painted, you know. So this crazy bad American scientists were trying to torture a poor soul to try to make it camouflage on a checkerboard. And maybe, you know, my client was, I'm joking about it, but they were really worried because it's not so usual in Venice you do a modern building. So the fact that we could represent to be contemporary on the other side, that you squint your eye, you can almost see it, to me, it was an important thing. So how natural you can be, you know, is Venice a liquid city? What do we do? And we're talking about landscape, but somehow we don't have to forget also landscape as a face. So we've been trained, my generation's been trained with typology, but maybe we discover you can make faces, you know, not just make pieces of noses of ears. So, you know, the standard type, somehow the typical man can be, maybe with Prozac, today we have a lot of psychopharmaca that can turn your personality into different things. And is making faces, making meanings, you know, what is the meaning? And to end it up, with this problem of nature. Walter Benjamin said, when will it be the time where techniques will reveal us what it belongs to nature? I think we're touching that time. Today, it's the moment where the algorithm, you know, when you see a Pixar movie, you can really fall in love with Ratatouille girl. When she takes away her helmet, the cook of Ratatouille, she goes like that, you can tell she washed her hair. She had a shampoo. So we have the algorithm of the clean hair, going like that. It's fantastic. Or, a storm. I mean, we're touching the Leonardo's dream of describing nature. And Paul Valéry had an essay called The Man and the Shell. And he says, when we go on a beach, we look at the shell, we pick it up, and we look at it, and there's something feeling like it's produced by us. Why do we pick up a shell and we wonder about it? And then this interdisciplinary team, they finally generated a computer program which generated the mystery of the beauty of the shells. This is some kind of, it's a computer program you can buy. And this team found out how the decoration of the shell are made. Basically, they're inhibitory waves of pigments going along the mantle. So today with a computer, we can just vary some parametric. This is really parametric. We can both, this is the real shells, and this is the shells generated by computer. So we can almost reproduce completely a natural process even in this random appearance. We're touching the verge of nature. But then Paul Valéry says the shellfish cannot do by its own lecture. We don't really understand what the shellfish does because the form the shellfish shapes is by just liquids. We are free to choose different matters, different figures, and these things are forbidden to the shellfish. So the action of man is choosing between different freedoms. So I found a shellfish which works a little bit like I do, a bricolage shellfish. And this is a drawing by Fuseli of the modern artist who cries on the ruins of the ancients, knowing he will never be as great. And this is Shinozuki. Thank you for your patience. Thank you very much.
So Chino, will you take a couple of questions? We'll go to about 8:30. Let me start with the first one. You've achieved a certain amount of romanticism, really, and lyricism in all your work, which you described as a kind of modernist work, yet you start with all these pictures of the traditional and equate it with a romantic notion of a city. And you achieve it, and you seem so beautifully to blend it into the natural landscape, the built landscape. I thought it was wonderful when you said people ask, am I from Venice? Because when you were in Venice, you designed like a Venetian. Can you say anything about the process? How do you achieve that kind of, effect that's so contextualized in dialogue, yet is so authentic as opposed to artificial and artifice like some of those initial shopping centers you showed us?
I don't want to be too autobiographical, but I'm a grafted person between the MIT education, I studied artificial intelligence, Lisp, and let's say European scholarship. I could draw moldings very well. And I have a very clear idea of method, even if I don't like this world, but it will take ages to express it. There was some philosopher said, it's not difficult what I'm saying. I'm not speaking difficult, it's the difficult things I'm saying. So I try to simplify a little bit. The kind of modernist, I'm doing a little bit of a caricature. A model is that you have a problem, you can analyze it, you can measure it, the numbers of kids, the course of the sun, the economy like this. Then you have a black box, some kind of cranking thing, and then you have an output. So it's some kind of data, algorithm, output model, which is sort of scientific model. I think this is not really the way we do. It's the idea that you could, just a process could lead you to the result. There's other ways of doing that. One, for example, you have a famous epistemologist, Charles Sanders Peirce. He's a very strange American guy, and he talked about what he called abduction. He said induction is something where you can take out a white bean 1,000 times from a bag, and then can you say this is a bag of white beans because you can still take away a black bean. Deduction is like, gravity, and this is a local occurrence of the Newton's law. abduction is something where what you do is not logically contained into the data. You have to take, let's say, a good guess, but then you have to check it the moment after with the data. And he takes, for example of that, a novel by Edgar Allan Poe, which is called The Murder of the Rue Morgue, where they found a dead girl, closed from the inside, maybe slaughtered, cut, and somebody heard shrieking, and I mean, all these things will not get together. And then the detective reads on a newspaper the gorilla was escaped by the zoo. Then he said, he hypothesizes the gorilla is, and everything matched. So you could not deduct from the reality what was there. So basically, my way of doing, but maybe scientific way is by guessing of what you know, and then checking right away with the data, which is a different method, but it's very scientific, and I think many people can talk about it. There's a beautiful article by Douglas Hofstadter, he's a genius of artificial intelligence, called Variation on a Theme as a Crux of Creativity. He says, lateral thinking always wants us to make us think that everybody's here and you just jump the paradigm. Many scientific discoveries were made just by observing what is there, maybe just introducing a small variation observation and then going logically to the conclusion. What I'm trying to say, that even scientific thought has a culture. I don't think we just start from zero. We start from paradigms. I'm not saying you should just apply or deduce from paradigms. Even an engineer has, he has to decide whether it's a suspension bridge or a cantilever bridge or whatever. He starts from a model and then he cranks the machine. In this sense, I would accept, in that sense, I quoted Stephen Jay Gould. Stephen Jay Gould has a very nice article about why do we use the QWERT type, which is not the perfect one. He's very interesting. Stephen Jay Gould says, if evolution, if you would rewind and redo it again, maybe things will not go that way, because many steps in evolution were partially, what survived the so-called Cambrian explosion is the Picaya, which was the originator of all the chordate, and it was just a tiny little insect. I mean, it was not the king of the time, like the little mouses were not the Tyrannosaurus rex. Going back to what we do, romantic. I don't know, something. Aren't we making a little bit of a caricature of nature? My argument was, are we sure nature is always as perfect as we think? Again, Stephen Jay Gould talks about the panda's thumb, which is not a thumb, but is a piece of this one. So nature does bricolage, transforming, the bones of the jaw into the ear bones. And I think, I'm not saying we should go back to the good old times at all. I think the problems of today are not solved by nostalgia. We cannot reproduce the ancient city. And I try to say that who tries to do it, that's just a commercial spoof of the ancient city. The only way you can do it just in a scenographic way, because even if you do it, you don't have the cobble maker. So you can make a fake Piazza of Siena, and in Las Vegas is full of that. But you can't reproduce the society we generated that. And paradoxically, the society who generated that was much more evil, tortured people, then we would not want to live in that time. At the Borgia time, you get poison, every other day. Those really were dangerous times and not so pleasant times. So we should deal with today's city. The thing is that the model of the metropolis was still a continuous one. It was a socially divided one. You had rich neighborhoods or poor neighborhoods, but somehow the boulevard connected them. You could still walk without maybe being arrested. Today, the gated community phenomena, which is typical of Latin America, is full of really guards. So we are really in front of a city which could be seen as a series of interiors divided by classes, lifestyles, and maybe we all go to a shopping center. And of course I come from Europe, so I still do have some kind of European model. Once I was traveling in Phoenix, Arizona. It's so risky. You should not make me the question because you will not go there. I was in Phoenix, and it was very late driving 600 miles, and my kids were said, Papa, we want to go to the hotel. And I could not find my hotel. And I remember for 3 hours going back and forth for 20 or 30 miles, and I say, this is another city from what I know. Because if I'm Milan or London, I understand if I'm driving to the center or away from the center by the number of shops. To me, it was like an endless grid where you have 3 miles of car dealers and maybe a shopping center. So I could not apply my paradigm. I understood still New York, San Francisco, but that city is a different one. So the arguments of social, of course, we cannot, the question of social mixture, for example. In my projects, we can't control the program so much. I mean, it's the developer or the city who does it. So I don't think we have that much power in that. But whenever I can, the question of mixing function is an important one to me to keep the city. But it's not always so possible because you have some social segregation. So let's say we're the emerging part of the iceberg, but the 9/10 of what we do, it's finance, it's rules and things, it's hidden. So many times the architects get praised or stoned more than what they do. Either they think they're demiurgs or they're just decorators. We're part of a society, we continuously generate things. One could say we do our best on the work table. So that's why I say the first part of the lecture was not really a theory. It was like an observation about commonplaces. And about also relationship between high and low, highbrow and lowbrow. I think avant-garde usually, the relationship between commercial art and high art is more complex today than we thought. So every, say, avant-garde idea really gets into, somehow there's a cycle where it gets trivialized, but in an interesting way. So the city is not made by the avant-garde, it's made by the trivialization of ideas. So every, maybe we live today, the rules by the administration gets embedded some ideas which were from the 50s and 60s about detachment, for example. For example, the hygienic laws about separating buildings are done before the invention of penicillin. We still do things separated, with setbacks and things like that, might be. So there's a sort of a long... my main point is another one. If the city, you have this very fashionable word today, resiliency, everybody, you can count with a Geiger counter the occurrence of the words, and resiliency go tick, 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 tick. But it's true, it could define very well what the city is, because the city survives us. That's to me as an axiom. We don't build a city every generation. So the fact that once you build something, the effects of these things go well beyond the causes we generated them is what should be a methodological something to think about it. Is it the general solution? No. So we cannot be of our age, but when we do something, I think architecture lasts more than the program we generated it. And that's to me, you have to embed, and that's where culture comes out. When I say culture, I'm not talking about erudition. I'm talking about the fine net of do's and don'ts, manners I would even call it, or habits of customs. Today, in a globalized world, do we have a globalized custom? Once I was in Dubai, and somebody told me, Architect Zucchi, please don't do what you just did. We're entering a meeting. I said, what did I do? You cross your legs. It's very impolite for us to cross your legs. I say, sorry, didn't know it. Do we have today a universal way of inhabiting? For example, this problem of Holland is different from Italy about the ground floors. The question of semi-private, semi-public space. So we are going, if you go in an airport is a place where there's no hierarchy in a way between people. It's in a way it's like a free world in a way, because you don't have any precedents like this. It's non-territorial. We are fatiguing putting up some manners which are universal, but still we need some things you still can understand. Do's and don'ts are not completely universal yet. So we'll see what it happens. And Christopher Alexander, in pattern language, he tried to say, like the family of man idea. Do we love, cry? Do we have universal of well-being? I think generally yes, but still what is interesting that we still have some slight differences. Maybe we are exotic, we're reciprocally exotic. So this, once the city will all become the same, the only thing not to make exoticism into a commodity, you know, just a commercial thing, you know, to be Milanese, to be Madrileñan. When I have some Spanish friends here, and if I go to Madrid, they will feel obliged to get me to the nice tapas bar of Madrid. If somebody comes to Milano, so localism will be saved by tourism, because what is the real Strasbourg? You know, you feel obliged to show a foreigner the real local product and that. So in a way, what will save localism is national pride of somebody coming and say, what is the authentic? I don't know, maybe you can make a fake. Romanticism, I don't know. I think we are quite romantic. The only thing, if you can turn it into business without doing prefabricated sentiments, because the commercial art tries to sell you the sentiment. A commercial film is something which sells you what you should feel about together with the form. So it's a prefabricated, you know, you should cry or laugh or in a command way. So maybe we should not be commercial just to prefab sentiments. So romanticism is good as long as it is not some kind of, you know, laugh when the light comes out, or cry or be Venetian when the light comes up. So this question with essence, as opposed as just a sketch on image, to me is a deep one. So can you be true? What are the question of truth? Modernism stated it was a kind of scientific truth. I think the truth issue is more complex, but still we're aiming for truth. But more than truth, sincerity, I would say, or aptness, or does it feel right? I think the question of does it feel right is the main one we should to pose when we design. Thank you for your patience.
I think, you know, you ended well. I think there is a real authenticism to your work, and that's what you're aspiring towards. It's not, and it is a reaction to what you started by showing, and that's your answer to it, is an authentic kind of architecture. So I'm sensitive to the hour. It's 8:35. Chino does like to answer questions. So Chino, if you're able to stay a little bit, if people do have questions, please do. No. We'll wrap it up and we'll take applause. But if people want to come up afterwards and ask questions, please do. Okay? Thank you.